This computer. Good afternoon, producer Susan. How's it going?
Great, Jersey Joe. How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Did you have a good New Year?
I did. How about you?
Good. You get hung over? You stay sober?
No, just a couple of drinks.
Just a couple of drinks. Did you make it to midnight?
Actually, I didn't.
You didn't make it to. That makes two of them. Getting too old for midnight. So all right. Hey, we got a big show today. We probably won't be able to fit it all in, but what else is new, right? So, all right. For those first-time listeners, it's a situation with Jerzee Joe. It's the focus of the show is news and perspective you won't hear on TV. You might hear some news stories you haven't heard about on TV, and then you might hear a take on some stories you may have heard about. But as Paul Harvey used to say, you're going to hear the rest of the story because the news media doesn't always tell you the whole story. Our quote of the day is going to be by a guy named Robert Louis Stevenson. Ever heard of him?
I have not.
Ever heard of Robert Louis Stevenson? Have you ever heard of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
Oh, well, yeah, him, yes.
Ever heard of Treasure Island?
Yes.
The Last of the Mohegans?
Yes.
Cooperstown?
Yes. Baseball Hall of Fame.
All right. Anyway, on our science segment today, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence application that can write essays, term papers, and poems without plagiarizing any previous work. On our health segment, we'll talk about the link between exercise and memory and the benefits of drinking tea. Are you a tea drinker?
I am, especially in the wintertime.
Well, there's all sorts of great benefits from drinking tea, more so than drinking coffee. We'll talk about a principal who didn't tell her college-bound students that they had won a national, that they had scored high enough on the PSATs to qualify as a National Merit Scholar. And she didn't tell them, which not only hindered their chances of being accepted into college, but also denied them access to many corporate scholarships that are only available to people who are classified as National Merit Scholars. We'll describe an actual college course titled Angry White Males. Sue, I know you still do some work at Penn State. Do you think Penn State has any courses titled Angry White Males?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Can't say that there is.
All right, and we're going to play 2 minutes of a documentary narrated by the late actor Leonard Nimoy, warning about the coming ice age and how we're all going to freeze to death. We're going to talk about what happens when you input the URL address www.antifa.com and what comes up. We'll review the changes to the IRS allowance for business mileage, which also includes what you can charge off if you do any charity work, if you're driving for charity. Time permitting, we'll point out another example of why Mexico is a failed state. And our taxpayer relief shot, it will be from New Orleans, where a convenience store clerk uses deadly force to stop an armed robbery that was threatening the life of a female cashier. So you think we can fill 30 minutes?
You always manage to amaze me.
All right. Anyway, Robert Louis Stevenson, famous author, Scottish author. He wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Treasure Island. And here's his quote that kind of struck me. It's, "Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds you plant." And let me personally, my take on that is when people say, well, what are some of my greatest successes? My greatest successes have names. They're the names of my children, and they're the names of people that I've mentored and shared life lessons with. They're not achievements, not awards I've won, not the money I've made. It's the seeds that I've planted. And I take great pride. I can look back and say, yes, I remember hiring, coaching, mentoring this person. They wanted to become a great success, raising a child who became very successful, great values, great work ethics. And I want to tell you a little story, a little personal story. For years, I was out in Colorado, had a horse farm, and every year I would get this massive load of hay delivered, 600 bales. I mean, it was huge, and these were heavy bales of hay. And I would put an ad in Craigslist for some day, 3 hours worth of work, $20 an hour. And I put it in on a Thursday for a Saturday delivery. And I'd get half a dozen people, and I'd talk to them and describe the job. It's going to be hot and sweaty, and blah blah blah. Every stack day before, and anyway, so I had the four guys I needed. Saturday morning early, before the truck was going to get there around 10:30 or 11. Saturday morning, I get a call about 8:30, and it's an older gentleman, and from the tonality of his voice and the dialect, it kind of sounded like he was a black gentleman. He says, "I'm calling on behalf of my son." He said he's trying to earn some money to buy. He wants to play football in September, and he needs to earn some money to buy his own pads, his own pads and his own cleats and everything. And he's looking for a chance to earn some money. Now, I didn't need anybody else. I already had four guys. I was set. But I said to myself, here's an opportunity, a young black man looking to earn some money. And so I said to his dad, I said, well, fine, here's the instruction, here's the directions. You come on down to my house, be here by 10:30. Make sure he's wearing a long sleeve shirt and long pants, because he's going to be stacking hay for a couple hours. The job pays $20 an hour. Anyway, he shows up, little bit of a guy. He was a running back. I think the guy was maybe 5'6". I mean, he was maybe 16 years old, 5'6", maybe weighed 130 pounds soaking wet. And I gave him a pair of gloves, and we put him in the barn. We put him up, and because he was little, we could put him up close to the ceiling. And guys were throwing bales of hay up, and he had to push them around and move them around, and stack them in the corners, and stack the hay. Anyway, had never done it before in his life. He came out 3 hours later. He's sweating, his shirt's soaking wet. He sweat through, and I was giving everybody $60, because it was 3 hours work, $20 an hour. And I walked over to to him and his dad, and I reached in my pocket and I said, you did a great job, and I really want to thank you for coming down. I said, you've never done this before, but I was really impressed. And here's an extra 20. And I gave him $80. I didn't give him, everybody else got 60. I gave him 80. And the message I wanted to send to this young man is that people will recognize and reward earnest hard work. Now, I don't know if that made any impact on this kid's life or not, but I thought it was a good life lesson. Producer Sue, what do you think of that, of what I did with that young black man?
Yeah, hopefully you did have an impact on his life, and I'm sure he wasn't as strong as the other guys that you had there that day, but his work ethic was probably greater than that of the other men.
Right. And again, I didn't say these words, but the message was, people will recognize and reward hard work. And this kid worked hard. So that was my own little story. I've told that story half a dozen times. And I consider that, as Robert Louis Stevenson said, that was one of the seeds that I planted, and I hope it sprouted. And again, that was more than 5 years ago. I don't know what's become of that kid, but hopefully I planted that seed. All right, moving on. You know what happened? Now, you know what Antifa is, right?
I do.
You don't have access to a free computer screen, do you?
I do.
Type in www.antifa.com. Tell me what comes up.
Oh, let's see here. Oh, helps if I spell it right, huh?
Antifa.
Nothing. It doesn't look like it's anything.
Well, 2 days ago when I did that, it rerouted me to the whitehouse.gov website.
Wait, did I spell it wrong? How do you spell it again?
Antifa, Antifa.com.
Oh, I did add an extra letter in there. Oh, it went to joebiden.com actually.
JoeBiden.com. How about that? So if you type
it went to joebiden.com and donate now to help elect Democrats. Yeah, it's a joebiden.com site.
So yeah, so if you want to share that with your friends, if you type in Antifa.com, it takes you to Joe Biden's to his political webpage. All right. Let's talk about the benefits of drinking tea. And these, I've read several studies. By the way, one study was from Penn University, which is, I believe, different from Penn State. The University of Pennsylvania?
Yes, University of Pennsylvania is in Philadelphia.
Right. Anyway, it's a study they did, and it improves It's very rich in antioxidants. It wards off dementia, wards off cancer, wards off heart disease. So it's just an excellent. So if you're a tea drinker, good. And if you're not a tea drinker, consider drinking tea this winter. If you get cold, a cup of tea is healthier for you than a cup of coffee. Now, by the way, certain teas like black tea has more caffeine in it than green teas or orange teas. So if you really want the caffeine, you need to drink a black British blend tea. But tea is much healthier for you than coffee. Now, on to exercise. I think a couple episodes ago, we talked about the health benefits of exercise. Turns out there's also people exercise were given a memory test within 4 hours of exercise. And people who have exercised, the test showed that they scored far higher on memory tests. They were shown pictures of things and they were asked to remember numbers and whatnot. Within 4 hours of exercising, they scored significantly higher than the same person who they would test who hadn't exercised in 48 hours. So exercise is good for your memory. It has both short-term and long-term benefits. So if you want to be sharper and better at remembering things, exercise. All right. Any thoughts or questions on exercise and memory?
Makes sense. Exercise your brain, exercise your body.
You're right. And by the way, and if you can exercise your brain while you're exercising your body, I work out on a recumbent bike and I'll do things like Sudoku. I'll ride a bike for an hour and I'll play these, Sudoku games, which also challenges the mind while I'm riding. All right, moving right along. Let's talk about IRS business mileage. Now, back in January of 2022, the IRS increased the mileage allowance for the personal use of your car on business from 56 cents a mile to 58.5 cents a mile. And that went on for the first 6 months of 2022. For the first time in the history of the IRS, in the middle of the year, because of the rise in gas prices, they bumped it from 58.5 cents. They bumped it by 4 cents to 62.5 cents per mile for the rest of 2022. So if you were traveling for business or doing any charity work in 2022, for the first 6 months, you get to claim a deduction of 58.5 cents a mile. The last 6 months, 62.5 cents per mile. But now we're coming into 2023. They've bumped it again. The IRS has bumped it another 3 cents to 65.5 cents per mile starting January 1. And by the way, if your employer is reimbursing you for mileage and is not reimbursing you at the IRS approved rate, one, you should tell your employer they should be. And if they're not, you can claim the difference. If your employer is reimbursing you at the old rate, you can claim the difference between the old reimbursement rate and the IRS approved rate. So again, if you're driving on business or charity work, starting January 1, 65.5 cents per mile. And think about it. You make a 300-mile round trip. Well, let's see. A 200-mile would be 65 would be 65 per 100. So a 300-mile trip is about $190 if you did a 300-mile trip, right?
Yep.
Sound about right?
Let's see. 200 times 0.65, you said? Yeah, 130.
200 would be 130, and a 300-mile trip would be about 190.
Yep.
So if it's 150 miles each way, you get $190. So, all right. All right. Now everybody knows the SATs, and there's a test called the PSATs.
Yep.
Preliminary SATs. SATs are for seniors. PSATs are taken typically by juniors. Now, the PSAT qualifies you for something called the National Merit Scholar Award. That's only given to the top 3% of the people who take that test. But if you're awarded that honor, number one, if you're applying for admission into a college, the fact that you're a National Merit Scholar Award winner carries some weight when the admissions people are looking at your application. And there's a bunch of corporate scholarships, so I'm talking monetary scholarships, that are only available to National Merit Award winners. Well, it turns out that for years, two administrators at the Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology have been withholding notifications to their students and their families. By the way, most of them Asian, who had qualified. And so she, as the principal, had been notified by the National Merit Organization that these students, had qualified and become National Merit Award winners. But she didn't tell the families or the students of that notification and that award, and so therefore denying them the right to use those awards to boost their admissions prospects. And she did that as part of their personal policy. Actually, it was the school district's new strategy of, quote, equal outcomes for every student without exception. That's a quote. School administrators, for instance, have implemented an equitable grading policy that eliminates all zeros, gives students a grade of 50% for just showing up, and assigns a cryptic code of NTI for assignments not turned in. In essence, it was a race to the bottom. So in other words, everybody, it's one thing to give everybody, I think conservatives say everybody should have an equal opportunity. If you're on the liberal side of the spectrum, you're not interested in equal opportunity, you're interested in equal outcome. And that's what this principal was doing by denying recognition of this high achievement award. She's saying all of our students are equal, nobody's special, nobody's better than other. Any reaction to her decision and her practice?
Yeah, that was terrible. These children should have been recognized and rewarded for going above and beyond.
They should. And again, it may have affected their college admission chance. It also may have cost them financially. And thank goodness the school district is being sued. There's a class action lawsuit. A lawyer had found out, they went back and they subpoenaed the National Merit Award program, and they got the names of all the students for the past couple of years who had in fact qualified, but were never notified, which may have cost them their ability to apply for some of these scholarships that are limited. And they're suing the school district. And I hope they get a significant award, because that is just wrong. I mean, this concept of equal outcome, not everybody's equal. God, we have the equal opportunity, but we don't all have the equal skills, equal talents. And this thing about equal outcome, I personally can't accept it. I don't know if you're a big fan of equal outcomes. I'm just a big fan of
equal opportunity. Yes, going in, but not. That's the whole point of the test. Then if it was equal outcomes, then why bother taking the test?
Yeah, why bother taking the test? Let's give everybody an 85 and call it a day. By the way, there were 800 special scholarships annually available to National Merit Award winners. So none of these kids for 3 years had the opportunity to apply for any of those 800 annual scholarships.
Well, I hope they are awarded a nice settlement, and those students who should have received scholarships can use that money to pay off their student loans.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm going to follow that. And if we get an outcome or a settlement, I'll certainly mention it in the next episode. All right, so let's move on to the University of Kansas. And this is a new course offered this fall, taught by Professor Forth. And the name of the course is Angry White Males. And according to Professor Forth, here is his course description, which includes answering the questions: where does he, meaning the angry white male, come from? What is he angry about? Is his anger misplaced? Is he blaming the right people? How long has this been going on? Is he a global phenomenon? How do we move forward? Now before you respond to that, let me ask you a question. If you were a college professor and offered a course titled Angry Black Females, how long do you think you would keep your job?
About a week.
If that long. Can you just imagine the uproar if you offered a course? And by the way, we've all seen, I've seen them at protest. And this is not, but within every demographic, you have angry people. I have seen angry Black females. I think I've seen some even in Congress these days. Ilhan Omar comes to mind. So yes, there are angry Black males, there are angry Black females, but if I were to offer a course titled Angry Black Females and describe the course as where does she come from? What are they angry about? Is there angry? Trust me, I don't think I'd make it 48 hours. They'd have the torches and the pitchforks outside my office, and I'm sure the dean of the college would fire me or ask me for my reservation within 48 hours. So that's just another one of those things. You hear it, you have to say, "Are you kidding me? Did that really happen?" But yes, it really happened. All right. So, by the way, this may be a little early for you, but back in the 70s, everybody was talking about global cooling and the ice age. And I want to play the first 2 minutes of a documentary. There was a show called In Search of. And this particular episode was In Search of the Coming Ice Age. And it was narrated by Leonard Nimoy. Leonard Nimoy. Oh, hang on, I'm going to back this up. Leonard Nimoy of Star Trek fame, he's deceased now. And they hired him, and I just want you to listen to the words they use, like according to climatologists and meteorologists and all the examples and data they give. I'm only going to play the first 2 minutes. It's 20 minutes long, but listen very carefully to the language that's being used. And here we go.
In 1977, the worst winter in a century struck the United States. Arctic cold gripped the Midwest for weeks on end. Great blizzards paralyzed cities of the Northeast. One desperate night in Buffalo, 8 people froze to death in marooned cars. Pat Bushnell was on the road that night.
Traffic just absolutely stopped. I was afraid of being stuck in the car all night long with the cold and the wind, running out of gas. And then what?
And by the way, they're showing scenes of just blizzard scenes, cars being buried, the incredible blowing snow. So very, very powerful. Here we go.
I think that if we had to go through a real bad winter, just like we just went through, I think we'd have to think about moving someplace else.
Move where? The brutal Buffalo winter might become common all over the United States. Climate experts believe the next ice age is on its way.
Now, remember, he just quoted, quote, climate experts.
According to recent evidence, it could come sooner than anyone had expected. At weather stations in the far north, temperatures have been dropping for 30 years.
Temperatures have been dropping for 30 years.
Seacoasts, long free of summer ice, are now blocked year-round. According to some climatologists, within a lifetime, we might be living in the next ice age.
Pretty powerful and scary stuff, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So my point is, I am not here to say yes, he was right or no, he was wrong. My point is that the media can cobble together any bits of disparate data they want to make any claim they want. And my point here is that if you look at some of the hype surrounding global warming, is some of the things you hear about global warming really any different in terms of how it's constructed versus what you just heard from Leonard Nimoy 50 years ago, 45 years ago?
Well, I think the media will take one specific point and, twist it around.
Right. And that's what he did. I mean, they cobbled together, they stitched together all this stuff and made a very powerful, compelling argument that in our lifetime, we could witness the dawn of the next ice. And this goes on, by the way, for 22 minutes. And they talk about how North America was covered with a sheet of ice a mile thick, and how you used to be able to walk across the Hudson River, 100 years ago, and blah, blah, blah. And the Midwest was subject to the most severe winter conditions in 100 years. Very, very powerful, compelling argument. And my question is, okay, well, apparently, now he could still turn out to be right, but apparently everything he predicted didn't materialize. So when you look at the same sort of ginning up and stitching together of data to make the case that the media likes to make about global warming and we're all going to die of heat stroke in the next 20 years, is there really any difference between what they're doing today and what Leonard Nimoy and the producers of the show were doing 45 years ago?
Essentially, no.
So I just, again, take everything with a grain of salt, because anybody can cobble together disparate facts and data to support any position they want, and you have to be skeptical. Being skeptical is good. So that's my only point. Be a skeptic. You should be. If you're not a skeptic, you should be. And if you are a skeptic, you should be proud. All right. Producer Sue, how much time we got?
You have about 10 minutes.
All right. Well, let me talk about Mexico being a failed state. What do I mean by a failed state? I don't know if you hear about the jailbreak in Mexico last week?
I didn't.
Well, in a prison in Mexico, on Christmas Day, 2 armored vehicles pulled up, and about 25 guys with guns came out, and they did a mass jailbreak. They killed 10 prison guards and freed 24 prisoners. Can you imagine anything like that happening in the United States?
No, I mean, it would definitely make the evening news for sure if it did.
Right. But the point is, you didn't have any federales, you didn't have the state police. Again, they literally just took over the prison, killed 10 guards, and said to 24 prisoners, okay, you're out. And these were all, of course, drug lieutenants, drug lords. And it's just evidence. And again, we can talk about a failed state at a later date, but you look at Mexico with the immigration and people fleeing Mexico, and the fact that the cartels basically, by the way, if you don't think that 90% of the government is corrupt, either corrupt or living in fear of the cartels, you're naive, because trust me, they are. With you look at Mexico and the corruption that goes on at every level of law enforcement. It's not by mistake that this took place on Christmas Day, and this wasn't something that happened in a minute or 5 minutes. This was like a 20-minute deal, and in 20 minutes, there was literally a gun battle going on. Nobody from the federal police showed up to stop it. It was just, oh, okay, it's happening. We'll come up after we'll show up after you're gone. So again, Mexico was a failed state. 10 guards killed, 24 prison inmates were escaped, taken away by these guards, and no big deal. That's just Mexico for you. All right. Moving on to our taxpayer relief shot. It's going to be from New Orleans. Well, by the way, I'm going to do my little disclaimer again. We do them with taxpayer relief shots because when a good guy or a good woman with a gun shoots a thug, it saves the taxpayers the cost of a jury trial, because these thugs don't have money for a lawyer, and so of course if they get put on trial, you have to pay for a court-appointed attorney, and then you got appeals, and if he gets sentenced to jail for 10 years, prison for 10 years, it's $80,000 a year. So 10 years in jail is $800,000. Then if he gets out on parole, you got the paroled officer and the parole meetings. So when a good guy or a good woman with a gun shoots a thug and kills that thug legally, you've saved the taxpayer some money. And here's the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, California, Florida, explaining it.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully you'll save taxpayers money.
And that was the sheriff of Santa Rosa County. We actually have another sheriff, and this is Sheriff Grady Judge, also from Florida. And here's his view on shooting thugs.
I would highly suggest that if a looter breaks into your home, comes into your home while you're there to steal stuff, that you take your gun and you shoot him. You shoot him so that he looks like grated cheese.
So again, this is not just me saying this. You got two sheriffs, 2 law enforcement officials saying, we actually think, do us a favor, shoot the thugs. That way we don't have to arrest them and put them on trial and testify at their trial. So that's 2 sheriffs. Now, this one comes from New Orleans. How would you feel if you were a clerk? How would you feel if you were a clerk at a convenience store, a female clerk, and a guy comes in with a register and sticks a gun in your face and starts to rob you. How would you feel?
I'm sure I'd be pretty frightened.
It's not, and by the way, and he starts to pistol whip you and knocks you to the ground, and you're bloody. You have no idea, and for all you know, he may shoot you, so you can't identify him. Well, it just so happened there was another clerk in the store that was stocking shelves, and that second employee happened to have a concealed carry permit, and he saw this armed robber go behind the counter and start to pistol whip this female clerk. And here's what happened.
A store employee is being called a hero tonight for the actions he took during an armed robbery that became a shootout. It happened last night around 9:30 at the Big Easy fuel stop in the 6500 block of Morrison Road. Jade Cunningham spoke to the store owner about how his employees fought back.
He just started shooting.
Tense moments unfolded inside this convenience store gas station.
My family and I were coming home yesterday evening, and the police car sped past us with the lights on, and it came in here.
New Orleans police say a man walked into the store Tuesday night. Owner Nick Hingle says soon after, shots flew.
Customer had walked in, went over to the coolers, walked over and started coming behind the counter. And apparently the girl didn't get the money out fast enough for him. He started shooting.
But another employee who'd been stocking shelves stepped in.
The cooler man pushed the girl down on the ground and went behind the wall a little bit. And he came out and he told the man, get on the floor. And the guy started shooting back at him again.
The armed robber, whose name is not yet known, was shot and killed by the employee. New Orleans police say their investigation shows the worker's actions were justified, that it was self-defense.
He saved the girl's life.
Still, neighbors are shaken.
I'm not going to live in fear, but it just feels like, your safety level is decreasing closer and closer to home. Yes.
But they are praising the employee's actions, thankful for his bravery. Jay Cunningham, Eyewitness News.
All right. So once again, we have a thug that wound up DRT, and DRT stands for?
Dead right there.
Dead right there. So no trial, no public defender, no probationary costs. All right. Well, that's all I got for today, unless you have anything you want to add, producer.
No, I was watching the Bills game last night. I don't know if you saw that. It was on ESPN right after the Penn State Rose Bowl game.
I didn't see the game itself, but I saw, obviously it's probably one of the biggest news stories of the day. I
actually watched it while it was happening. It was
yeah, because the newscasts, have not shown the actual hit. But it's very, very sad. Hopefully, we don't know how long he had no blood to his brain, but hopefully he makes a full recovery. But it's very, very sad. But I was struck, the close-up they were showing his teammates. I've never seen so many 300-pound grown men with tears streaming down their face. I don't know if you saw his teammates crying.
But I think, you could have heard a pin drop in that stadium. I don't know how large that stadium, I'm guessing probably in the ballpark of 80,000 people. But the Bengals and the Bills, the coming together as one team to support each other.
It is. And I think it's the first time in my memory that an NFL game has ever been canceled. It was, I think, 5 minutes into the first quarter.
Yeah, it was
they
very early in the first quarter.
Game's over for today. Go home. We'll call you. We'll reschedule. First time I've ever seen an NFL game stopped, literally stopped. And I think they're going to attempt to replay the game, but I've never seen an NFL game stop. And I think it was the right thing to do. Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think a gentleman, Penn State player, Adam Telefaro, he suffered a spinal cord injury during one of our games, and it brought back memories of that.
Yep. It's really sad.
Adam, he came back and walked out on the field a year later. So it was
that was great. Well, let's hope.
I wish the same for DeMar Hamlin.
You and I both. All right. Anyway, I know we're running out of time. I want to thank all of you who took the time to listen to this podcast, for giving up 30 minutes out of your day to listen to me ramble on about the things I find of interest and importance. I hope you learned something today and found some of these topics as interesting and important as I did. And if so, I hope you continue to listen. If you want to see some of the materials and the story links you heard me talk about today, you can find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzeejoe.com. That's JERZEE Jerzee Joe with an R and a Z, jerseyjoe.com. If you want to send me an email with a comment, question, or suggested show topic, you can do that just by sending me an email to joe@jerzeyjoe.com. And that's all I got for today. So Susan, unless you got something else, I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Good night.
Good night. And you have a good night, Susan.
You
Take
too.
care. Bye-bye.